So starting a new video, we started off the stock round, and this fella picked up a third share of FYN that got him the presidency from over here. I don't know how big a deal it is to lose the presidency. It means he doesn't, this guy no longer controls the company, and it shifts over here. But other than maybe, shifting an extra train over to his CNN or something along those lines, I don't know how much terrible damage you can do. It's clearly he can do some real damage to the FYN, but and support his own company. But it's not like other people can't simply drop their shares of the FYN as it gets more and more worthless. It doesn't become a hammer blow to someone else. It just becomes an opportunity for his rail. So, it kind of sucks that he's got that. That might be the winning move, the fact that he's picked that second company up so easily. And, well, I mean, what do you do? It was either that or this guy's holding a kind of crappy company and nothing else. And he felt like he was shaking things up. But that's what you get when you shake things up, right? Screwed. It's generally the rule. It's generally the rule that you make things worse for yourself when you do so, and you can place better if you don't. Although in this case, he just really gave more bonus to one of the leaders. But this fella, he's looking at, well, I have less shares of this. He would love to get rid of these and try to start a new company, I think. It's hard to tell how much value there is to starting a company in this game. In 1830, it's really clear that extra certificate for the presidency is important. Here, or the extra share, here because certificate limits kind of expire at some point later in the game. It may not be that important to hold all those presidencies for the end game position. Also, you don't have really the capability to pillage a company and take all its money by selling your privates or whatever. It's certainly of value to have a company or to have two companies, but it's not obvious to me that, it's all that much of value to take the hit on the shares that I have. But we're going to try to figure something out and see what we can buy. The BHINR actually ran last time, which means all the companies are available from now on. Actually, he counted up he'd have to give up CNNs if he wanted to start a new company. That might seem like a worthwhile proposition, but CNNs are the only thing that's really cranking. And he's decided instead to buy an IOW. Chances are he's not going to lose money off of it. He had to pay 74, it's only worth 68. So right there he lost more than it's been making, but it's going to be able to upgrade a tile to green. So he's going to at least break even. It might actually make back its stock value. He's got actually 2 operating rounds now, so it's almost certain to have at least made its stock value back and also made some money. FYN, less likely to be advantageous. It's a much bigger drop, a $20 drop from the par value that you'd have to pay to buy from there. So nobody's terribly interested in that. I got these things I could cash in, but given the value that they produce, they don't seem worth selling at this point. So, and remember, if you cash them in, you're back. I think you lose 30 pounds off the value, which means this one would produce nothing. I could cash them in as shares, though. And then they're worth something. So the BHC, at 30, it's producing 5 pounds a turn. It probably, I can get that with this. So I am going to actually close that out. I gotta see when you can close them, when you can make the exchange, because if I can get the 5 pounds before I make the exchange, it's worth it. during the owner's turn in a stock round, including the first one. Yeah, I'm assuming I'm going to be able to make more money. I'm going to actually exchange this during that stock round and not screw myself. Now, I don't have to worry about taking the final share there. The rules kind of say it's okay. You know, you're supposed to take the next one in order and not worry about that. That's just a reminder share that lets you know, hey, make sure that you can actually buy this. Although it kind of confuses me to do that, so I want to take the final share. I'm sorry. Huh. Actually, is that the railroad that I'm supposed to take? BHINR. There doesn't seem to be a special share for that. Or somebody already has it. Ah, there it is. Alright. Just something of my OCD tells me I can't not give this certificate to the person who traded in. And actually, if he did that, that would still put the priority here. He just had to take another round, I guess. Okay. We've got our stock values set, so I guess we're ready to roll. Sorry about all the time there, but I'm having trouble orienting. Okay, and the CNN upgraded this space. It helps both companies that I hold the most shares in. That seems quite worthwhile. Ran for 12 bucks a share, and now that somebody's actually above the 11 or above 10, I'm marking them on here. You don't have to do this, but for me it helps as a reminder of how much value these things make, since I walk away from the table fairly often. I don't always know what the payouts are. And actually, in a lot of 18xx games, you're focused on your own thing so much and the shares that you're collecting for that sometimes you miss out somebody who's starting to look better, how much they're actually making, and you know, you're just not paying that much attention. So I think this is kind of a handy little thing to keep track of. We used to keep track of values on paper as well, although that was when we kept everything on paper. And it was all open, and it slowed the game down tremendously to do that as far as I'm concerned. Now I've got the thought of whether or not I want to buy that 3 train. I think I do, but I don't want to leave the company without the money for a train, so I want to give it some cash, at least 50 bucks for its 3 train, so it can buy another 3 train. And I'm going to collect my cash here. I'm just going to give it the 50. Now, that's really kind of pillaged this company, but since I have shares of it, I have enough money that I can build another train. And what's really cool here is I can run a 2 train here, a 2 train here, and a 3 train down to here, or probably even better, the 3 train here. Yeah, well, the reason I can run through this is you're allowed to run through 1 token, right? Or 1 blocked city, and that's really a weird kind of thinking that's going to be hard to come to. This is more valuable though, so I will head that way, I believe. And now we go to the IOW and see what it can do. IOW actually has a kind of nice setup here with 2 trains on it and this little thing. Well, I was able to hook up now that the greens are available. I mean, I was hooked up before, I guess, but it didn't produce any money. I can't quite get this over the crack in the board. That's the trouble I'm having here. And so now I have 270 runs, and I actually come out better at 14. I pay it out, and that's kind of neat because paying out is I get 2 advances. 2 double advances. Advances are always 2 spaces, i.e. on 1 tier. So, you know, I've made back a lot of that share money really quickly. I view that as kind of important. It might dislodge people throwing money in here. One problem in this game compared to 30, I'm not going to automatically generate cash flow for my corporations. However, I don't have to keep holding them. And I can dump shares. I can, you know, put them into receivership or is it insolvency when it's insolvency when you have no train. Receivership is when nobody's got presidency, which might happen as well. So there's a lot of freedom here. I can just try to make my money off my companies. I don't have to worry about keeping them alive by swallowing. There might be reasons to do so, or by juggling trains from other companies or whatever. There might be reasons to do so, but if I can bring up a lot of cash and get some sort of feeder company in place, that feeder company can be the thing I throw out rather than this perhaps more valuable starting company that's going to be maybe able to crank good share value for a while. It's hard to tell though, because I have to be making $32 a share to make it to the end game win condition. That's a pretty hefty amount of money, especially. Well, it is possible to get things down to 2 trains. It is possible to have 2 trains per company, so that would probably be the necessary condition for that. And Purple ends up making about $4 a share, which doesn't move their stock price, but pushing themselves into this direction. Jesus, there's a red thing there I didn't see. You can see how those red things can become kind of invisible. Where he could have gone straight through to here, but the train he has, a 3+2, would go 1, 2, 3, and then he couldn't make it down to Ventnor. If instead he runs through here, remember you can ignore dots of either kind, then he can make it to Ventnor, and by avoiding Shanklin here, might take him a few more track lays, but that's okay. And I guess I'm on to the next, oh son of a bitch, I forgot the miners again. I'm on to the second stock round. I'll pay the miners out twice, the private companies out twice. I always have trouble with them. And before, things might have looked like, hey, they maybe needed a little shaking up, we're falling behind. Well, now it looks big. This sucker's making 27 a share and pocketing $40 for the corporation. Now, $40 for the corporation is probably really important. That's the cash flow that might get him another train in the future. This is a company that I don't want to lose control of, to tell you the truth. It managed to jump 2 stock values because of that. It's running a 3 train here, a 2 train here, and a 2 train here, and that's just sweet as hell. All those doinkers in between mean that I do get this constant little cash flow. $40 is not tiny either. That's almost the equivalent of having a couple shares in the bank pool, which is never going to happen when you're the top company, right? People are going to be scooping up your certificates. So in an 1830 type game, the choice would be between swallowing and not, and you'd have to really make that decision. But here, I can just keep this constant cash flow. I have to think though, because next turn I'm going to get to move twice again. 27 still keeps me in the twice, at least, right? I might be doing better. But then after that, if I could get it up to 32, I would keep moving twice. So I might want to convert some of these to actual little towns, and I might want to start scoring this town at some point. As of right now, I'm ignoring that town and hitting one of these halting points because I would rather get cash into my company treasury. As we push into the stock round, I can see Purple is building to try to get higher score shortly. But as of right now, they're not really making it there. They can't hit these because there's no stop beyond them that they can go to. They've got the possibility of paying to get into Ventnor or trying to upgrade and bust their way. There's a red line here. Bust their way into this stuff to try to get into the even more valuable space. Although I think Ventnor probably gets to be 50 as well on an upgrade. So this is probably the smoother and easier route for me to take, not having to fight my way in. That's going to cut into my money, the $60 needed here, but I can make that up pretty quickly off a couple of runs where I'm hitting these boinkers. So a couple of them, so that'll work well there. As of right now though, I'm only making $4 a share, which is, it's keeping me from losing stock value. Look at the stock value on that sucker, 128 a share. I think we're going to see things start, this guy needs a feeder, or to use this as just to start a new company on its own, because I'm not sure this has a lot of expansion capability. It's kind of locked in down here. I can't upgrade this, so until the 5 trains come out and the brown track, I'm not going anywhere, and I may not be going anywhere anyway in terms of being able to lay track. I can run a train through here perhaps, but that doesn't help much. So I may be looking at another company to try to start and hope that I have enough cash without having to sell any of my IOWs. Not for any great reason, because you know what? The IOW is kind of useless to me. It's not going to make me a lot of money. I'm not going to be able to transfer trains around to it. It's probably going to have to swallow at some point to get the 4 train. So I don't know how appealing a company it is at all. Money with which one capitalizes the companies is an interesting factor here. The fact that the par values are fixed, not absolutely like in 1835, I think they are, but that your early companies start out being able to start with more cash, and your later companies are going to be more and more cash poor. That becomes a factor here. So for example, I could buy NGSTL at 68. But if this guy is selling an FYN, he now has enough cash. He had to sell it to buy at 62. Maybe would have been able to make it at 54 without selling. But after having sold, which he wanted to do, he's beginning to see he can buy an IWNJ for less, for more of that money, and he's unlikely to have the excess money. It's possible, so he'll have the excess money, but it's unlikely that there will be a BHINR laying around. That's the decision he has to make here, because if he starts the S&C at 62, it's going to have less cash. It might not be as viable a company overall as if he can start one at a higher value. But also on top of that, in terms of shares, he's not fully invested if he buys it at a lower price and then this share doesn't become available or something. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to start the IWNJ here at 74, because that's going to cost me $370 for the 5 shares. And granted, I could buy an extra share of some of the others, but the point is, I think the most important factor is I'll have more cash in my corporate treasury. That might help me bail this out, because I do have some equity in that. Or it might help me build a better company out of this. You know, there's sort of this, no matter what, having more money in your corporation seems like a really important consideration. And starting corporations, especially late in the game with not enough money to even buy some of the later trains. You know, trains are only $350 now, but they go up into the $700-800 range. You're not going to have the cash here right away. Immediately, they start out as insolvent. That's horrible. You know, they're going to be losing stock value throughout that period, etc. That's not a position that I can see you wanting to be in. And, you know, being primed for that situation seems like a mistake. However, I think I can get this company up and running pretty well with 740 in it. And it's going to be a little tight even with that. I'm just so used to the 1830 model where, you know, yeah, I could start this company at 72. I don't think so. I think instead I'm going to invest this turn, and maybe next turn I'll start it at 100. You know, or I'll start a worst choice of a company at 100. Well, here that worst choice is right here on the table in front of you. I can make any of those choices, but the best choice that I can make in terms of capitalization is this guy. Now, I'm missing the fact that he could start up as high as 82. I don't want to push him that far because that would involve selling more shares. Next player to go is the guy with 2 presidencies already. Well, he converted one of his Finn shares over, protecting his presidency of that somewhat. It could still be taken away. And then he bought, just with really the cash on hand, the presidency of the S&C down here, figuring that's going to be kind of a nice little run to begin with. Just because of the starting location being better than the other opportunities available. He also had exactly the top amount of money that one of these 2 bottom tier companies could use. So it seemed like an optimal opportunity there to pick that up. That puts us over to this guy. Now, he does not have hordes of cash, but he has a decent amount of shares that he doesn't necessarily look at as terribly valuable. The BHINR, I'll probably hold on to that if I can, just because it's not worth so much, and I'll have lost money on the certificate, although I may have made money overall from that first run. Looks like I probably lost a little money overall. But over here with the IOWs, I'm just looking at them and saying they are not a very appealing prospect. So if I dump them, I have a decent amount of stock value. I get 90 bucks per, and then they dump down to 78 per share. But the problem is that 78 per share because I am holding the company for it. Now, I could turn in, grab that company, the final share of it, but then I'm losing money. This thing makes me 30 bucks a round, and it cost me more than 90 bucks. I just don't feel like I'm getting a good payoff by converting it at this point. Alternatively, I could sell it to the bank for 100 bucks or pounds, but it's probably worth that, you know, even after I dump it. It's got a nice revenue stream. The other thing is I'd be dumping these certificates to start another company, to kind of kickstart the trains a little further in. And what's wrong with that is that the trains that I'd be pushing out are going to make this more likely to dissolve. So I've got a tough decision here. Do I want to start a company? Do I want to, you know, trash the IOW stock even further, or sell, or sell this outright, or what? And how much harm am I doing to myself? Does owning a company make up for that harm? And that's a really tough decision. I don't know where I'm going with it. We have hit the end of the stock round, moving to the operating round. Why do I keep the die on top of there? I don't know. Somehow it makes it more important to me. So pretty much all of the minor private companies have been cashed in, except for this one, which, as we went through before, is making too much money. This one was making decent money, but the CNN is making much better. Stock appreciation doesn't matter. I'm getting that with the private anyway. It's, you know, the certificate's saved for me. It's not like in 1830, if you don't cash the certificate in time, somebody will steal it from you. Let's see what else. We have a lot of companies starting at this point. That one. And most importantly, this one. Yeah, if one person got 3 companies that they started pretty close to the maximum they can start them at in an 1830, or most of the games of this series, you would say the game's over. However, the maximum you can start it at in this is not necessary. You know, these companies are not all equal, is kind of the point here. The maximum that you can start at is different, and in particular, this one did not start terribly well. And this one, I don't know if it started at its maximum. Did it? Yeah, it did. But it's been pillaged a little bit. I bought a train for that one. So, you know, hard to tell where that's all going. But I would say definitely this guy was one of the leading players earlier, but his big holdings in IOWs, they're dragging him down hard. That's not going to make a lot of money for them. When we compare that, the FYN makes better money, right? Yeah, not by a lot. And then we compare, of course, the CNNs, which are really rocking right now. We don't know how well they'll do in the long run. And we don't know what the effect of all these new companies hitting are. There's only one company left. This guy's going to have priority. I doubt he'll have the cash to start a new company unless he wants to dump an old company. Which means I think this guy's getting another company. But, that just gives you an idea of where we're going there. No, this was the one thing that had to be knocked loose in order to fund all these companies. Nothing else had to. So, yeah, it feels like we're pretty far along if we're down to most of the companies being gone. My understanding is this is a somewhat shorter XX game than most. So, that may indeed be the case, that we're fairly far along. So far this round, what's happened? Blue kicked off, made big money, 29 a share. Everybody's thrilled with that investment. Red ended up swallowing, dropping them from 90 to 82 a share. That got them enough money, I believe, to buy a 4 train when the issue comes up, or close enough that if they're in... let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 50. I think that can get them a 4 train. That may have been a bad choice, because here's the thing. This guy could have eaten one of these 2 trains and maybe shared its money and been able to give it enough money that both companies could get by without either one having to swallow. But they would both have a breakdown where they have to buy the 4 train and they don't have a train. Red's going to have to swallow once more because it won't have a train next turn. And that's kind of problematic. I'm a little curious about the whole receivership thing. Is it the receivership? Or is it insolvency? There's so many different things here. Not receivership. It'll be insolvency. When that's actually judged, because presumably I won't have a train. I will be able to rent out that track and get more cash, which may mean so many different terms in this one. It's at the end of the turn it must buy. If it ends the turn without a train, then it becomes insolvent. Okay, so you've got to go 1 turn without going insolvent anyway. So swallowing saves me something, I guess. Probably a couple of terms of insolvency that I would lose money on as well. So I think I'm probably saving a turn by running and swallowing at this point. But had these guys done their little dance, then each would only swallow once, and that would be fine. As it stands, the Isle of Wight has to buy the first 3 train, if I'm not careful here. That doesn't seem like a great idea. $50 more for a 4 train still seems wise. So I just don't think that I'm going to buy that sucker, the last 3 train. I know there's somebody who has to. This guy pretty much has to do it. He has no other options. So if I fund some more money over to here, I'm probably going to be able to get a balance of cash that allows me maybe to run both companies without swallowing again. And indeed, yellow chose to run towards Ventnor and then buy itself the 3+2 train. They'll be able to start making some cash off that. They've got to make sure to come out through here. So they can't like dot this and just run over here. They've got to run a train here, and they've only got 1 train. So this game works a little differently from most of the XXs. And then we go to the step where the 2 trains are disappearing, which is the S and C buying a train. I could have shifted some money by buying one of these. Maybe I wanted to do that. One of these 2 trains. See, I have a pile of cash here, and I got too many 3 trains. So I got 210 bucks. How much would that help here? Let me count this up, because before I buy that 4 train, if I buy a 2 train from the cows in Newport, then I can get additional money over to that, and that's my big money maker, right? What I did, I shifted enough cash from here over to here, buying one of these 2 trains that's just about to dissolve anyway, so I'm not going to get to use it. Enough to buy one of these 4+2 trains. There's 2 left. This guy is the only player left. I'm pretty sure he's not going to be able to buy one. I can't ask him. I don't have shares in his company. Only the owner has shares of that company, so I can't find out how much cash he has. But all the 2 trains disappear, which means these companies are gonna, have a problem in terms of not being able to run next time. But that's okay. We planned for that, more or less. What we didn't plan for is that there might not be any more 4 trains left. We may have to swallow to get ourselves a 5 train, which is not terrible. I mean, actually, if that works out correctly, we're in good shape for that. Simply because that means with little effort, we've gotten permanent trains. We may see the trains start to fall pretty fast the way this game is developing. For these guys, I had to choose one direction or the other. I could play in both directions, but that would really suck. So I shot up this way thinking this is going to be the more lucrative at this point. When the V tile comes out, and it never changes from this, it turns into one of these doinkers. And because this game has rules, you can't hit the same tile twice with the same train, I'm not going to be able to loop through one and back around and hit it twice like you can with double New York in, say, 1830. So I got to make sure that I actually go somewhere and don't create just some stupid local loop that hardly makes any sense at all. Right, that was this guy, and he did not pay out, obviously. One more company for this operating round. We got one more operating round then. That last company, hey, this is all I've got to make money off of, so I built myself another train, but in order to run that other train, I need another location. That's not going to work. Shit. I may not want that train. The reason that's not going to work is this doesn't upgrade into anything useful, remember? So I can run track coming into here, but then I can't come out. So I do not want this, and I don't think I want the 4 train either. I think I want to wait until I get a permanent train available and just pick that up. This is not a pleasing setup, actually. I don't even know if I like my track play. It doesn't go in the right direction. I may be shooting up this way instead, or trying to break into here. Shit. Totally screwed up that player turn. I'll have to reverse it completely. One thing you want to notice, though, is I keep using the halts. There are, over here, non-halt alternatives to those that actually are stations. You can still skip over them. In some cases, it might be nice to have that alternative because you could choose either one. But the halts are very valuable for one big reason, which is that they produce company treasury. The problem, though, is I'm not sure the halts can be upgraded to non-halts. Yeah, it looks like they can. There's a whole web here, and basically, it's hard to see, but once you upgrade something to a town, you can't back upgrade it to a halt in any sense that I can see. So, I'll undo this move. I have enough capital in my treasury for a 5 train. I don't want to buy the 3 train. The nice thing about the 5 train is it will last all game. I've built my track to run through here. I'm not sure I'm thrilled with this, but I don't have the cash on hand. Shit. To blast through there, and I'm going to be careful not to cover up these little red cracks because they're a real problem as far as I'm concerned in terms of the design concept. 18XX doesn't usually have blocks that are so invisible. 1830 has some kind of dark black ones that sometimes you forget, but these are just, in the middle of everything. That's really troubling. I wish, I don't know what I wish. I wish there was a way that the tiles were a little bit smaller or something, but then the whole map would look worse. Okay. So yeah, this isn't my optimal situation. I'm running through here. Eventually I'll be able to run up into that N, which when it turns brown is kind of a neat space. But how far I'm going to be able to get, it's hard to tell. Whether I'm going to have two trains, which is likely, I'm probably going to have a 5 and a 3 for at least a run. Well, to make that make sense, I've got to start blasting through here, or I can't go through there, or some such. And nothing's really looking appealing. Now, if I can get a dot up here, let me look at the dot rolls, because I don't think you can dot just because you could run your train there, which is to say there's a token blocking me here. I don't think I can leapfrog it, but I'm not sure. Bases can only be built that can be reached from any existing bases by following track but not past tokened out stations. That seems pretty clear to me. You can't leapfrog because your train's able to get there. So I have to wait until this opens up as M to play my dot there. And I need not play it here. I could play my dot up here, which would give me a much, much more powerful position. The problem is if M ends up dotted out, I'm going to be stopping. If we look at the N tile, I'll have this dot. I might possibly be stopped here if that gets dotted out as well. I don't know how much people are going to be doing that. But as of right now, companies have a constant source of small income which can fund those things pretty easily if they're not waiting for trains. Alright, we flip back over. And let's see, I'm going to have to take a break, but let's see if I can remember to pay him out. I had no problem this time. You know, we're down to 1, right? It's real easy. Somehow, when everybody's interested in it, I forget about it. I don't know. That seems the opposite of my usual way, so I'm not sure. One thing to note, we're up in the red zone here. That means if somebody sells a pile of stock, the first share sold doesn't count against the stock price. They have more stability. They're really blue chip stocks now. So the shakeup of the trains has not treated the CNN all that well here. It's gone from having 3 trains on it to only having 1, and it's not going to be able to generate a lot of income here. This comes to the difficult decision though. I can, without swallowing, buy myself a 5 train if I wait it out. Or I can just keep cranking money, buy myself the 4 train now and try to produce what I can. It's a hard call. At this stage in the game, it's not like the early part of the game where cranking money is just the end-all be-all. But my feeling is with 3 companies in play, I can... it's going to be harder to shift trains around in this because there's restrictions against selling your last train if the other guy already has a train. So you can't really ruin things quite as much. But you know what? I can buy this 3 train for a pile of money from another company or something like that. So my feeling is that the normal gut impression of run hard and run as hard as you can as long as you can still more or less applies. Obviously there are some considerations which mitigate that, like, oh shit, I'm gonna go bankrupt. Well, that's not gonna happen in this game. Does it mean you run hard all the time? No, because there is some value to holding on to your companies, but there's also a value to getting your stock value as high as you can. And I might be able to end this sucker, if I do things right by cranking my way out to here. I don't know. These are big payouts that you have to make to get the highest stock values. That's going to be tough to do, I'll say. Okay, so we're going to try buying that train, and our run is cut down. This no longer applies, right? So we've got to start here because this is our home. I don't know where I'm going to lay track, but I'm trying to decide that now. 1, 2, and I can hit one more place. And it doesn't look like I have a lot of options. It looks like it's going to be a 30-buck space no matter what. I have the option of increasing my revenues a little bit, but we're really looking at 8, 11, or 12 revenue, which isn't even going to move me forward. Duh. It's worth swallowing. And I'll probably be able to get 29 next time. Let's see. If we're talking 12, 5, 6, 7, 8, another 13 added to that, that's only 25. So I'm not going to be able to run this hard enough that I'll be getting a double payout if I don't pay out now. Because that extra money would sure be kind of helpful, but I think I'd rather pool it in here, see what I can do with it. Where am I in certificate limit? 16. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, I'm okay for quite a while. All right, so I think we'll run kind of smoothly. Buying that extra 4 train kind of fucked up Red's plan. Their plan was not as bright as I thought it was. Going back, I don't have any track I can lay. I gotta spend $350 and buy myself a 4 train. I think I have enough money to buy myself a 5 train. But this guy only had enough for another 4 train. I'm gonna buy that 5. So I'll get 10 bucks back for that. And that moves us to 3 operating rounds between each stock round set, but it doesn't take effect right away. It's going to cause, well, it doesn't cause any additional rusting, but it brings the brown tiles into play. I got a lot of train on not a lot of company there. Let's see, it drops us down to 3 trains per company, which probably isn't a big deal. So we've shifted into yet another era, one of the big eras. To me, it's, always that yellow, green, brown. Those are the really important ones, even if there are other effects to the different eras. And that means there's only one more 5 train available. That's the cheap permanent train. This poor fucker's not going to be able to get it unless he buys a train. He might be able to in the long run, but basically he's got to buy a train off the Red company, and it might not be a permanent train, and that's going to just cause problems across the board as far as I can see. Other people own IOW and don't own this. I placed this track. Quick question. Hey, where do I want to put the dot, right? I could put it here, and then I've got a double dot in a row. That looks pretty potent. That looks like an actual way of blocking people from getting up and down from here. But no, not really, because then the M ends up opening up another dot. That becomes valuable. Other people are going to want to, somebody dots that they can run through this space. I view it as more important to make sure that I can hit this twice if I get 2 trains on that company. So once is going to come down from the south, it's going to run through my home area, and the other one can run maybe up here somewhere. Who knows? But I am going to want to start converting some of these doinkers into actual money-making towns of some sort, or hit money-making towns in some way that I'm not currently doing. That's going to drop him back, and then for train, I spent all my cash, almost enough to buy another 4 train. For the 5 train, if the 5 is available, I think Red can afford it next turn. We'll see. They'll be able to get a couple of doinks and put 20 bucks in the bank. They could swallow, of course, but we don't want to do that. And that would be pretty damn potent. Chances are, though, I'm going to be stuck having to buy something like a 6 train, which I really do want to get out because I want to kill all those 3s. Yeah, having a couple of them kind of sucks. And that means we're going over to this purplish color, which I don't know who that is. That's over here. That's the BHIR. It's a lot easier for me with the U.S. railways, just because they're more familiar to me. I highly doubt that local railways on the Isle of Wight are terribly familiar to anyone who isn't an expert in that particular, area of knowledge. That is one of the things that I think makes, your 1830 or the 1870 particularly appealing, is that you really know those railroads. 56, I don't know, it came early enough in 35 too. But it gets harder and harder as you're reaching for these railway nets that aren't so popularized, especially in the U.S., but I highly doubt that the Isle of Wight's railways were very heavily, known by anyone except for real historical aficionados of the railways in the Isle of Wight. For good or bad, it does kind of take a little bit away from the taste of things, even if this has all kinds of neat mechanisms, and you can kind of see why. I've got 1830, Baltimore and Ohio, Age of Steam, Chicago Express. They all cover the same damn area, right? Yeah. A lot of interesting stuff to look at station building wise. Now, I'm probably not going to leave this like this, but if Purple built this track here, where do they put their station? If they put it here, or here, either one, well, yeah, either one guarantees they get to hit this once. And that's pretty decent. But if they put it here, they can run through here up to here and then run another train out of here. But if they put it up here, they might have difficulty coming out of here. So there's some really interesting situations with how the track comes. Now that comes from this ultra complex track. I'm not going to play this though, because I found I don't have the cash for that other dot right now. I have exactly enough money to buy myself this. I'm going to make 20 bucks extra from hitting some boinkers in my pocket. Eventually I'll be able to buy that dot, but right now I can't, so I'm going to hook up Ventnor, which makes me the most money right off the bat. I kind of lied. Ventnor doesn't make as much sense as upgrading this, because I'll be hitting this anyway. The problem with this is, it's going to, it could upgrade into a place that I can't pass through easily, and I could end up very truncated. As of right now though, my 5 train can run 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is pretty sweet. What am I going to run my 3 train out of? Well, yeah, I don't know. That may come out of here and run up here. We'll see. That would probably be the best I could do. I have bought the last 5 train. That means we're down to the 6s. And there's only 2 of them. And they're going to kill those 3s. And that means I'm probably not going to get a 2 train run anyway. Ever again in the game. Because that kind of capital is just not going to come together. So I've got to think pretty carefully where I want my token for a 5 train to work the best. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, I don't even need 1 for that, but I would need it if this gets clogged or if that gets clogged. A lot of possibilities. I can't throw it up here unless I upgrade this, but I could put it here. So there's the token selection for the stations is really, really different in this game. It's not like, yeah, that's where I want it. Now you're shut down. It's a little bit more, oops. I ran the wrong company, didn't I? Oh, God. I should have been running this one. Son of a bitch. Yeah, I have trouble telling the colors on these guys, because this is kind of brown and that looks kind of purple to me with the bluish. Alright, well, we'll back up and do him and probably end up leaving this guy where he is. Here too. I mean, this is the heart of the game. This is the point where the final victory is really being determined. There's going to be a lot more play going on, but it's when these trains fall out and the routes that you start to build at this point in the game that really matter. And that's why it kind of sucks that I jumped the gun and played the wrong guy first, but I'm leaving him where he is because I don't think it had any effect. This fella shot his way through to the center point. Now he can go through one of these. What he ended up doing is his run is 1, 2, 3, 4 down to here. Picked up a couple of boinkers to give him 20 bucks in his reserve. But he's looking at his company doesn't look like it's going to last very long, to tell you the truth. I don't see being able to buy another permanent train with this. In fact, most of these companies look like they're kind of doomed. Starting 3 companies always is, kind of this, oh my God, how are you going to afford it all? Well, usually you can burn one of them, but it looks like they're all burned at this point. Stock valuation time, essentially. We have stocks that have gotten much higher than their par value, but there are still shares available. So you want to just buy these out when you get the opportunity. It's quick money, unless there's some opportunity that you're passing on. And right now, all the other shares are available in reasonable quantities enough. I probably, with this guy, can buy only 2 shares anyway. What I can't do is what I can do in some XX games. I can't pick one of these up and then dump them both. You have to do all your sales before you do your purchase in this particular design, which kind of makes sense, to tell you the truth. Except that there's a certain equalization as long as the par value is out there, preventing anybody from being able, to do, I don't know. I don't know what it is, because the arbitrage is just there. But it makes it more likely that you pick up and dump stuff early when you have the ability to do it in that order, rather than, if it's going to take you a stock round to pick it up and another stock round is the wrong thing, a stock turn to pick it up and then another one to sell it, even though you get to buy something else on it. There's just a difference in terms of the feel of it, because I could buy this and then this guy sells them all, and wow, I just lost some money, or else didn't make the gain that I expected. So that kind of arbitrage aspect, I think, keeps it from becoming too dramatic. It makes, a 10 or 20 buck valuation change worth taking advantage of more often, and we haven't seen that as much here. Anyway, that's what he's going to buy. People, I don't know if anybody's really terribly excited about starting another company. This sucker will have the money to start. If this guy has the cash for it, he might do it. But this guy's not too thrilled with it, because he's sitting on this 4 train. It's going to produce decent money, and at some point or another, not great, but decent, at some point or another, he's going to have to bail out of his company, or else do a swallow. So the more time that he has before the 6 comes out, the better it is. We also have this situation where this guy has to turn in his share, because if he doesn't turn it in, when that 6 train comes out, well, the purchase of this could be a problem. So priority positioning and everything could become important. So it might well be worthwhile for him to turn this in, or to sell it for 100 pounds. In a sense, given that this is only worth 74, it might be worth more to just sell this to the bank pool. Yeah, he chooses to go with the start of the new company. He sells off all his fins because they're going to drop in value from 105 to 90. He still made money off of buying his, so he can't be too upset. But, if he didn't want to hold them, and they don't look terribly valuable right now, it would have been a good idea to just sell one. So, but he may have trouble finding things worth buying, and that's one of the problems. And at least he made 8 bucks, unless this guy sells too. And then it goes over to him for the presidency with that crappy company. XX games, this would never happen. First of all, it's against the rules in most games for more than 50% of the company to be in the bank pool. No problem here. Got rid of these stupid FYNs, and I'm starting to pick up other shares. I probably have too much money, but I don't know. There's a lot of certificates out there, and they look like the most loser company out there. Of course, this one doesn't look too much better, but at least it looks like it might have cash. I can't ask about it, but after I buy a certificate, I could, and then I could sell it if I don't like the answer I get. But yeah, there's a lot of things like the IWNJ and this that have permanent trains. And what the hell, I don't want to go through probably one run with crappy payout and then a second turn where I don't get a payout at all, and then who knows, you know, maybe it's making money, maybe it's not. It's probably going to be the next 2 rounds I don't get a payout, and the question is it all 3? Does it just swallow one time, you know, the one run it would get? So the value of this thing's just tanking completely, and the purchase, well, now he's got the presidency. Now, one of the reasons you don't want to give companies up so much if they're at all viable in, say, in 1830 or whatever, is the certificate is important. You're allowed a certain limit of certificates, but that goes away. Coming with the 8 train, which might be coming fairly soon. Sometimes there's in these games, and I can't say with this one, but sometimes there's a period where, you know, the first permanent trains kind of come out, and then things slow down and get a little bit calmer for a little bit. That doesn't look like it's going to happen here. The way the 5s came out, and now it looks almost certain, you know, with a new company coming out, the 6 is going to come out. That's going to crash the companies that have 3 trains. But there is one proviso, one little difference between this and the other games. These companies that crash don't need to buy a train. They can operate as an insolvent company, and thus they'll make you know, a certain amount of cash right into their treasury, but they're not going to be, you know, there's no guaranteed time when that payment's going to have to come out. So getting $500 with or $600 or whatever with this company is going to take some time, and that's actually part of the problem here. I'm choosing sort of what looks like the best company, and in this case I'm agreeing IWNJ looks pretty good. It's well below par. I'm paying a premium to have that stock in my hand. What other options do I have? The IOWs are running at par, so I wouldn't be losing money with them. But I know they're going to take a swallow. Other choices that, you know, the CNN's not available. That's the big money maker. Green's below par, obviously now. Yellow is right at par, but I looked at what was here and I'm thinking, geez, I might want to dump that too. I dumped the Fin as well. That's becoming pretty questionable. He's actually lost money on his Fins by buying one on that arbitrage principle. Over here, 62 for these guys. That means par would go just right, but they don't have a permanent train. And then these guys at 60, well, I'm below par by $8. You know, it's a pretty close run. 12, 8. Let's go for what looks like the healthier company. This one has 2 trains. It just doesn't have this convincing position on the board that the IWNJ has with this central location. And that's the big thing. I think in the long run, these are going to become very valuable shares, so people are kind of picking them up now, even if they lose a little bit of money comparatively in the short run. This guy's jumping on the bandwagon. He only needs to keep $186, and he's got a $200 bill here and some extra in order to buy up the shares that he needs to float his company. So he wants to make sure he gets one of these before it completely sells out. It looks like it's about done. We run around a bit more. The BHINR has sold out as well. Oh shit! Not quite. I believe this guy bought the first one. No, this guy bought the first one of the set. Let me give him $8 back, because there should be, this one, there should be still a certificate left. I didn't realize I had one there. He did turn in his shipping company. Nobody's going to want that thing. As it stands, if he turned it in for a share, he loses, $26 on that, and that definitely not a worthwhile proposition. Would it ever be? Yeah, sure. Look at where blue is. If red was there instead, and these would have probably been sold out by then it's a great deal. But red hasn't managed to break out in this case, and that's, sometimes at least you have different options. You have a floor value to this. It's worth $100 when you turn it in. Here had an interesting sleeve, which I almost blundered into and then decided it was a bad idea, which is, could have bought this thing everybody's buying up with the hope that somebody buys into his company so he doesn't need it. The problem is if nobody does that, in most of my XX games, nobody will help you float something, but there is a reason to argue that this may be the best of the remaining purchases out there. If that were to happen, if nobody bought it, then he would have to sell this BHINR again, and that would lose him more money than anyone else in terms of the stock value going down a little bit. You might be able to make it up if this thing comes crashing out and becomes powerful and starts making good runs. It might end up not mattering at all, but honestly, I'd rather not tweak with my stock values that way. I'm just buying up my stuff, which means he gets an extra share of BHINR. All the IOWs got bought. The only one remaining is tied to this share, so that can't be bought until that share until that private goes away. Well, he decided to float this VYSC. Looking at the options, he knows the NGSTL isn't in great shape. He's assuming the S&C is not in as good a shape. He knows the IOW is in fairly decent shape, actually. But the S&C he's assuming is on about the same par with this. Maybe a little stronger, but he figured buying a new company is more likely to have less swallowing. This thing's almost, this thing's guaranteed one full permanent train. There's a permanent train on this other one. It's going to make decent money. That's where he's putting his money. So this guy could have bought a BHINR instead safely. He could have taken that risk, but he didn't have any indication that people would buy. Now, it's possible in an XX game, if you don't disallow table talk, and this game actually seems to absolutely allow it within the rules, that, this guy could say, hey, will you help me float it? It's the best thing out there. Why would this guy answer yes? Well, because you don't want to give the bonus share to the guy who's winning the game right now. So there's, good reason to believe that it might get floated anyway on him. But he couldn't really take the risk of getting hit hard without that kind of agreement, and I didn't think to ask. Which I guess winds us back through priority here, because he has no money left. And this guy's running actually close to his certificate limit. He's, I think, at 13, which means he has room for 3 more certificates. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, yeah. Thus, losing the presidency could be a short-term problem, the presidency of the FYN, but, this guy's considering whether or not he should just dump the damn thing. He's holding shares that he should have done it earlier if he was gonna. He's holding shares that are going nowhere. He's just got kind of this thought of, well, maybe I can, use this third company for some valuable reason. I don't know. Different kind of XX thinking. And now we're to the end of the stock round, and it's pretty clear this guy's just so far in the lead. Not only did he fill up his certificate limit, which 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This guy did too. He's got enough money for another couple certificates in hand. These guys are just so far behind comparatively. But, early on we saw these two were in the lead, and, no matter how much jockeying you can do, it's hard to overcome an early lead in an XX game. There are ways to manage it, but usually whoever cranks the most money fastest, the mostest with the fastest, or the firstest with the mostest, ends up, just setting the pace for the whole game, unless they build such a bomb for themselves. Now, in this game, you can't build a bomb for yourself, because you can always dump the crap you don't like anymore. So anyway, we're going into, there's going to be 3 operating rounds now total, and it's unlikely this stock value is going to move much, just because I don't think He's got that kind of running capability. He's got 2 trains running on him. He's actually something of a minefield there. In fact, his 2 companies, this guy's company, they're all looking less healthy than some of the newer companies. Boom, boom, boom. Which may mean that this guy has some room to catch up a little bit. We'll see. That'll be an intriguing thing to watch if it can happen, because usually you can't do that kind of catch up in an XX game. But we'll see how painful it is to run out of trains. Certainly you'd be doing that kind of catch up if you're facing these guys having to pay out of pocket. But yeah, I don't think people would be quite as willing to push the trains out as they were in this game, just because there's a certain safety net there. You're not going to be buying that, $700 or whatever, half your portfolio, for having mismanaged a company. Just kind of interesting.